Welcome to The First Turn. I'm your host, Hyena, and today, Llama and I are talking about This Week in Warhammer. If you like what you hear, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share, or let us know if there's something you'd like to hear us talk about. Alright, let's get to it. Welcome to The First Turn. I'm Hyena.
I'm Llama.
Today we're talking about news in the world of Warhammer. It's pretty exciting stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
We got a. I'm gonna first start off. We got a fourth Angron.
We got a fourth Angron.
I didn't notice that. So we've got old character series, new character series, Ascended, proper 40k one, and then Joy Toy actually announced that they were coming out with an Angron toy.
That's what we needed.
16-inch tall, whatever Angron.
They'll eventually make 8.
Yeah,
because corn.
I mean, yeah, they have to at this point, right? Like, it would be a disservice if they didn't.
Yep.
So.
You gotta have ones where maybe he make the one when Sanguinius ripped his.
Make one where he's on the toilet,
right? Are the butcher's nails down there too? Like, does he have to deal with that?
Maybe that's why he's so angry. You know, it's like I've eaten wings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just throw that out there.
Yeah.
Spicy wings, and you know, it's the same experience 2 times.
Yep. You know, like Zinch plays that trick on him, like slip something weird in the wings.
But yeah, speaking of Zinch, Emperor's Children from Slaanesh is out.
So not Zinch, but Zinch wants you to think that.
It's fine. It's funny. Yeah, so Emperor's Children pre-order goes up this week, this weekend, today.
And it's the box set.
The box set, which has the advanced book, which is we suspect was made a long time ago because it apparently has points in the book, which I didn't think they were doing anymore, which makes me think that this book was made before they said they weren't doing it anymore.
Right.
And they've just kind of been sitting on it, for a while. But we've got, a waiting period before it becomes valid. So we're not going to see it being played at Adepticon, for example.
Right.
They won't be valid for that. The next tournament, though, quite likely we'll see them. And it's weird because we were talking about it, and it sounds like they are one of the armies that has kind of clocked in as fair on release.
Right. Yeah, we have a couple of folks, one of whom organizes tournaments, and then some others who just were in the know, and everything they've said, like the points that were released separately
were a bit high. Oh, high in the book. Sorry.
High in the book. Yeah. And the points that were released separately, and then people reading the rules, it's like they've got some really cool rules, and the points seem kind of just right. Now, it's all theory right now. You never know once it hits the table, but
yeah, because
they do have a slightly limited roster.
Right, because we were saying some things in the book, like they do a lot, and their stats are really good, but how do you get there? Conceptually, I mean, other armies are similar. We already know this, right? Like, how do you get into combat with a unit that is as fragile as some of these units are? It's like, well, maybe there'll be something where they move just the right distance to be able to, like, close gaps and get into combat without actually being touched, and there's no problem at all that we thought there would have been.
Well, and one of our locals even brought up a point that, and I'll give him credit for this, because I didn't know he thought on this dimension kind of deal, but he said if the events are using the GW-defined terrain as per their mission pack maps, then like the army might actually fare better than a player placed. So
similar to your Blood Angels when they were able to hop between terrain pieces, because so there's a lot of infantry in the army. Mm-hmm. Infantry can immensely take advantage of ruins, which most large pieces of terrain are, and so you could have times where you can get across the board over a couple turns, and literally you were not seen by the enemy at all.
Yeah,
and then that's. Considering we don't know specifically what has scout, what has infiltrate, what has abilities to run and charge, what abilities to deep strike on their own, or with a character, or with a special detachment or a stratagem. I mean, there's all kinds of things like that factors that go in. I mean, it's the same with the 8-bound, right? Like 8-bound with World Eaters. One of them is good because they're cheap, and the other one are good because they can start 9 inches away from the enemy.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there's some trade-offs, and so like if these guys, specifically these exemplars, these swords masters, I forget what they're called, but the coolest ones.
Yeah, I love them. I think they look great.
They are just power armor Marines with an extra wound. I don't even think they're tougher. Maybe they're a little quicker. Mm-hmm. Very, very fighty. But again, if they can't touch anything because they get killed, it's what's the point of having them?
Yeah, now you got to decide, like, well, is my way of protecting them by buffing them up to 6, but then I lose 1 and their killing potential goes way down? Or do I run them min squads and hide them?
Right.
But then you really want them to be fighting. So.
Or do I just run 5-man units of another unit that are way cheaper that at 2 wounds don't lose anything because there's so many 3 damage guns in the game?
Right.
Right? Like, so you're being overkilled, but that doesn't matter in this game.
So. And it does seem like it's just an army that maybe kind of nailed the trade-offs where they're killy and they're fast-moving. They're not great against heavy armor, and they don't have a way to mitigate damage reduction.
Okay.
So a lot of their stuff hits at that spot of like the 2 and 3 damage, and if they go to an army that can reduce by 1 or something like that, now all of a sudden they're in a
really
weird spot.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
But everyone seems pretty pleased with it. They don't look at it and think like, oh man, this is going to break everything. But then they're like, you know what? They're not bad. They'll probably get played.
And then the coolest part is the aesthetic, I think, works.
Yeah, I love the new models.
I think they look great, especially all the characters. The characters look phenomenal. All the character models.
And that could have even been a part that maybe took them a while, is we saw it with Hedonites in Age of Sigmar. I think with Slaanesh, there was a long while where they weren't sure what the aesthetic was going to be going forward. Mm-hmm. Because of what Slaanesh is supposed to represent, and you've got this wide variety of different ages playing the games.
Right.
And so
I think, and then part of it, I think, is, I mean, you could tone down the sexualization of the sexualization of the army, the aesthetic, but then you'll have the old neckbeards that are like, well, this is what Slaanesh used to be.
It's not my Slaanesh.
Where's all the lady bits?
I need boobs.
You know, all that. And so it's like, well, this isn't Slaanesh anymore. They've family styled it.
And nerfed its aesthetic.
You know, it's just like, it's not. It's just more accessible. Like, don't be gross.
And I think the fact that they leaned into stuff like vanity, and which is one of Slaanesh's traits, and they leaned into that promise of power, and they leaned into
it's vanity, it's pride.
Yep.
You know, it's overindulgence, gluttony, like
excess.
It's that kind of thing. They've really lent themselves in, and they kind of leaned into that, as opposed to just been like physical pleasure.
Right.
You know, like, here's some things that confuse you mentally because it's everything at once.
Well, you know? and even with things like on the demon side, which those received an update when Hedonites were launched, but it was even things like, instead of putting them in BDSM bondage gear, they put them in like silks.
Right.
Which is another kind of association with indulgence or pleasure.
Also very sexy.
Very sexy.
But yeah, no, I agree. It evokes sort of that indulgence, that pompous, that the unnecessary.
These people are in a palace while the battles happen outside. You know.
Can you imagine if Space Marine showed up with like a silk veil over his power armor? You'd be like, who is this guy? You know, oh brother.
Just trying this out. What do you think?
Yeah. So I do like it. I think it's a fine line to have to toe, to not offend anyone.
Yeah, and they
but still kind of maintain it.
And they didn't eliminate it entirely. You have some on the demon side, especially, that still.
I mean, the fiends are a weird design.
Yep.
That is a weird model. Some of the slangors are odd, and there's some, I don't know, leather chaps and stuff that they're wearing, but they're not humans, so there's no like anatomy that's showing when, you know, parts aren't covered, that kind of thing. So it's like I said, I think they did it really well, and it sounds like, again, it might be the only complaint would be it took so long for them to get Emperor's Children out, but it sounds like everything in regards to them, both the balance, the aesthetics, the power levels, everything looks good.
Yeah.
So I like that they have a reduced roster, even if it's not easy enough, as easy as we thought it would be to bring a combined force of demons and mortals.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Because there's like one detachment that limits it to half your points depending on the game size you're playing, and that's kind of not the promise that we were given initially. That was saying, oh well, marked armies are going to be potentially mixed forces of demons and mortals,
like they are in AoS,
like they are in Age of Sigmar, because that's the only way you can play demons is within the respective army, and then there's no way to play demons on their own in AoS besides maybe an Army of Renown.
Right.
I know there's a Be'lakor one
yeah.
but it's not just, hey, play any demons. It's, here are 8 war scrolls of demons you're allowed to bring, spanning all 4 gods, plus Be'lakor. So it's very toned down. It's very limited. This seems even more toned down, more limited, because if you want to play a different detachment, you aren't allowed to bring your demons.
Right.
That leads us to wonder then, like, well,
are all 4 going to be like that?
If all 4, well, let's assume all 4 are like this. There's no way that they can eliminate a combined demon, army book, right? There has to be a demon book if this is the only way, because this is basically an allies system where you can bring a reduced amount of demons.
It's like Brood Brothers.
Right,
or
exactly.
Yeah.
Like this would be the equivalent of saying, well, we're releasing the book for Gene Stealer cults. Now the only way to play Guard are as Brood Brothers for this book in one detachment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not allowed to play Guard by themselves. But now replace Guard with demons and, Brood Brothers with, whatever they're calling them. It's that kind of thing. So they're going to have, at least for some time, a way to play a demon army. They have to. It doesn't make sense otherwise to me. Yeah. I mean, maybe eventually when all 4 books get updated and they say, oh, demons are in all of them, now there's no more demon detachment anymore. The only way you play it was with this, and then we're going to release some detachments for this book that are just demons of that one variety.
Yeah, it might just end up a really slow hair removal equivalent of a Band-Aid peel.
But I'm wondering if they're trying to get rid of demons in general. I mean, it'd be weird, but if they try to get rid of demons in general from AoS, from 40k,
right,
and make demons an AoS bad guy, I don't know. This would be an interesting way to kind of try to do that. Maybe demons themselves aren't as big of a threat on the battlefield anymore. It's these mortals that they've contracted with.
Right.
Right? Because they're more effective on the battlefield than just demon incursions are. Because maybe Psychers have figured out ways to deal with demons and can banish them much more easily.
Well, and it's not like demon technology changes, really. And
because they are timeless. Their technology, will not change.
Yeah. And they're coming onto these battlefields with weapons of impossible power and super soldiers everywhere. And so you're right, maybe in 40k they just wouldn't be as effective anyway. And so, I don't know, maybe over time they will just like
I said, all the greater demons are in AoS boxes.
They're in AoS boxes.
There are no 40k boxes for greater demons.
Box is an AoS box.
Right. And so I'm wondering, I had posited this before, is what if the greater demons are the first things to go from 40k and they go back to just being AoS models?
Right, because they used to have a separate box style that would say Chaos Demons,
right,
and then it would have both symbols on it.
Yeah.
And now this is an AoS box. Mm-hmm. That on the back has an afterthought that's like, oh, by the way. Right.
So I wonder. I think it'd be very interesting. I'm not saying I have inside information on anything.
No inside information.
Or that I've heard anything or rumored anything, but I think it'd be very interesting. Because like you said, if technology is advancing in the human worlds, the human realm of existence, but demons aren't advancing, I mean, humans get stronger, demons stay the same.
Yep.
Right? Maybe demons have to come up with a new method to influence humans. Being there physically isn't doing it unless they show up in greater numbers.
And so it could be things like possession, mutation, contracts. That's their best way of doing it. And so it manifests itself in these mutated Marines and possessed. And, yeah.
I think it'd be super cool.
Demon prints.
And then, yes, you'll see parts of those old models, of those old soldiers showing up in the battlefield, but they're not the bulk of it anymore. You're not going to have just a full army of demon.
Right.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting idea at the very least. I'm sure it would upset people who have demon armies and all that, but I don't think demons have ever really hit right in 40k. I wouldn't say ever. They've always been a problem, right? Whether it was additions of summoning demons for free and they were, you were doubling the size of your army,
right?
Or it was things of we're the best psychers in the game. We get 1 million casts. You can't stop them all. We mortal wound you off the table before you get to do anything.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
Well, and when there's been additions where there's cast and then deny, they would I'll use all my crappy spells to burn your deny or your dice pool,
right,
and then get to my good ones, kind of thing. Yeah, you're right.
Or even the bullshit of hey, I've got a banner. I'm going to roll for bravery. Whoops, I rolled a 1. I get more guys back than I lost.
Yeah.
It's it was that kind of stuff too. It's why is that even necessary? Oh, you want to shoot me? I have an invulnerable save. I do not care what your weapons are in this game. I will always get my save, which makes me kind of the most durable thing in the game.
Well, and even when you think of like animated series set in the 40k universe as opposed to Age of Sigmar, 40k is so like gritty and material. And even though there are things like psychers, that's the demon's method of interacting with people now. It's like in the shadows, in your mind. And yeah, sometimes armies have to travel through the warp and whatever and deal with that. But like on the battlefield, it's like it's so much more material than like Age of Sigmar, which is just a place of magic. Mm-hmm. So maybe, and it could be something they're kicking around and they're trying to like maybe wean people off of the idea of demons being a big 40k staple. I mean, they have straight up technology with wires and helmets and whatever that can just bind demons, like that can just trap them. So,
and then permanently kill them.
Yeah.
And so demons are like, I ain't going there anymore.
Right.
I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
Let the humans go.
Yeah. Whereas in AoS, they make perfect sense. Yeah. Because again, you're dealing with magic and modern ghosts. And,
yeah. So I mean, we're just spitballing here. Could be interesting. Could be an interesting thing to happen.
Yeah. I don't have a dog in the fight. I guess either way they went, it'd probably work.
Yeah.
But, and it could be a furthering of that effort to split the games more. But you're right. It would be one of those where the only people you'd hear from are the ones who are sad.
But it is interesting to me that we talked about that splitting the game, splitting the armies, splitting the whatevers. And we've generally noticed that they try not to allow, at least in recent years or days or whatever period, trying to make, when they come up with a box, it's for one thing only. You can't use it for anything else in a different game or whatever. Purpose making the things so that there's not crossover anymore. I mean, we saw this happen kind of with a lot of the specialist games where they've gotten Legends rules. They don't really want you using them in match play, at least. But even for like soldiers, they're trying to like split things off so they're not spanning multiple games. Like I said, the demons in the boxes. This is kind of leading into that. But we're also talking like, I don't know, all kinds of other stuff. Right, it purpose built. AoS, we saw it happen with certain models that would span armies, like a box set for cavalry. Right, you had hex wraiths coming from the same box as you had black knights. Two different death armies, but they shared the horses, they shared the riders. There was just extra bits that made the different models. I don't think they want to do that anymore. I mean, we had a specialist sort of cavalry come out for Night Haunt when they first got the Dread Blades, and then now we've got a replacement for the Black Knights, these new Barrow Knights
coming out.
I don't expect to see boxes that make multiple units for multiple armies. But the funny thing is I say that, but even as recently as that same release of the Barrow units, they're getting faction terrain that can be played for both Vampire Counts or Night Haunt as little tombs. And it's like, well, crap, you threw a wrench in that idea.
Yep. Because
now you made this terrain piece that's for two different armies. Because they cut the cord with a lot of the models for when half of a kit goes back to Old World and half of it stays in Cities of Sigmar.
Yep.
There's still a couple of those kicking around, but yeah, it's just like it's so inconsistent. It's hard to predict.
It seems like those predictions draw the logical conclusion, like, oh, okay, they're separating everything. That's what they're mostly doing. And then like, well, here's one.
It's a brand new thing that's going to blur the line again.
Yep.
The terrain piece for the Iron Jaws and Cruel Boys is a dual kit. You can play it for each army. But that one makes sense. They're in the same book together.
Same book.
Right? Yep. There's two different versions of the Realm Shaper engine for Seraphon. The coalesced one, and then or at least there was. I don't know if there still is, but there's two different ones. One that's like viney and overgrown, and one of them is like a clear. This is a piece of magic that's been made physical, But again, same army, two different ways to play. It's just the Maul Pot for ogres. Two different terrain pieces you get to choose from. It's same army, different things to do with them. Lots of choice kind of stuff, but it's just really strange when it's a kit for multiple games that just they don't interact with one another. It's just really strange. So,
didn't the Vargeist and Cryptors operate that way for a little bit too?
Technically, they still do. Yeah. So there's it made 6 units. Maybe it was only 5. I think it was 6 units at the time.
3 different kinds of courtiers.
Yeah. So there was like the character versions of each of those models, plus the body was the same for all 6. Plus there was 3 different units. It was a ghoul with a big bone.
Yep.
And like ooga booga.
That's the Crypt Horrors.
Bones through nose and stuff. There were Crypt Flayers, which were the flying ghouls, but still had like the smooth human faces.
Right.
And then there was a Crypt. No, it was a Vargeist.
Yeah.
It's a completely different name. That was a bat-faced ghoul, giant ghoul with wings.
Yeah.
That was vampiric and not ghoulish. And that kit still makes all of that. So yes, you're right. 2 different armies.
But that's an old kit. That's a holdover from...
I actually put together 3 of them recently, and that kit sucks. That kit is so bad. It's terrible. They try to do some of that stuff where they sculpt in like shoulder muscles into the join, where like the body's got like a weird kind of like ripples on it, where like the arm will fit with the shoulder muscle, kind of zippering into it essentially. But the parts are so heavy, the wings are so heavy that like, yes, they fit, but the plastic is chunky, the parts are weighty. It's hard to hold it in place to have it stay there long enough to dry properly. And so, like, I was having all kinds of problems getting that stuff to stick. Maybe because the plastic was old. I don't know.
That's a fantasy era kit when they first started introducing the ghoul side of vampire counts, right?
Yep.
I think.
Yeah. So, not a great kit.
Maybe they're due for it.
But, I mean, early plastic AoS, I mean, I guess it was still old world or end times. The Khorne
Wrathmongers.
Wrathmonger kit is kind of like that.
It's bad.
It's very chunky. Really weird. What I think they thought was clever, like arm joints and stuff at the time. Arm joints are so much better now because it's like flat, either flat places or like pegs to help put the arms in place. Such a better system than this like monopose. Like it looks like jagged teeth.
On the lightning bolt,
the lightning bolt sort of shape on the upper arms, the upper shoulders. Man, that's a rough way to build stuff. That's tough. But yes, we have examples of continued kits using spanning multiple games. But I swear I thought they were getting off of it. I thought for sure they were getting off of it.
And again, it's like the slowest band. I think it is where they're headed, but it's like the slowest Band-Aid rip ever. And it could. I don't know if it's just what they want to do doesn't line up with their scheduling, or they thought they would have it ready by then, and then that time in the schedule comes, and it's like, well, let's just keep it this way for one more round.
Right.
I don't know what goes on there, so
yeah,
I like to think so, but we have suspicions about what may be, because we have had 40K drop after 40K drop to start there, and we had Gloom Spike Gets.
When we look at sort of the entire like release history for the last, call it 2 months, right? We have a lot of 40K stuff. We've got a lot of Horus Heresy stuff coming out. Lots of that kind of stuff. We have lots of Titanicus. We've got lots of all these other games. But the only stuff we've really seen for our game, AoS, that's it. Honestly, I can't hide it.
It's my favorite one.
It's my favorite one. We have plenty of stuff that's been kind of released, but it's stuff we saw last year, right? Like none of this stuff is new.
No.
For this quarter.
We knew about Auric Warglands and Gloom Spike Gets months ago.
We knew about the undead. We got shown this. We shown the Borrow Knights at LV, or was it LVO? We knew about it before that even, right? Did we get
World Championships in November, I think. End of November.
Is that when we saw like the all the skeleton stuff?
I think so, yeah.
I think you're right. Or at least maybe we saw the box set and the contents of the new stuff, and then we got a couple new characters in addition that are going to be coming. But
as an aside, mentioning the World Championships, then we'll jump right back in. On Warcom, and the article might have zipped by before people saw it, they announced an update to the ITC for this year, starting this year. Oops, so they're taking over the... No. They reworked the schedule a bit, because I guess it used to work sort of fiscal year-y, where the ITC season would end after LVO.
Right.
Now they've moved it to end after the World Championships. Makes sense.
Which makes sense.
So end of November, beginning of December, season ends, point totals are in, Player of the Year awards, all that stuff happen, and then they start the new season.
Okay.
LVO now kind of kicks off the year more than...
Which I think kicking off the year is a better capstone.
And your World Championship should be your end,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
And then one other thing is they were talking, I didn't read fully into it, but it sounds like some mid-level events like GTs, they might be making it so they're worth more points.
Like towards qualifying for Worlds?
Okay. Because I imagine the big ones, which now Adepticon is ITC.
Which,
by the way,
I will say this too. Speaking of that, I can see sponsoring specific, well-established GTs as being more valuable, because how hard is it to throw a GT? I will tell you, it's not.
No.
You just need to have a place to hold it, enough people sign up and show up on the day of to qualify for it, and you could overinflate results like crazy by manipulating the GT schedule. Well, now big ones will now count for more. Ones that have been going on for years, that kind of thing, will count for more than just like your little pop-up GTs.
Yeah, and
and
I think, and I could read it more thoroughly. You can read it. The article was pretty short, but it was a discussion they had with Frontline about like how can we help these local ones like that, because you do have some GTs that have become important. Everything from Bug Eater to Midmo to even our own Iowog.
Yeah, Iowog is kind of blowing up. It sells out.
Yeah, immediately.
People sign up and sell out within. We had a guy who was like, "Oh man, I was at work and my lunch break didn't line up right, and I tried to get on my lunch and it was already sold out."
Yeah.
Well, see you guys
on a
there.
wait list is what happens. Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like an 80 or 90 person capacity, which isn't big for a GT, but for our local community, that's a lot of people signing up for one event.
For a 2-day, 5-round possible. Sometimes they cut to top 8, some don't. They're usually in the 50 to 80 person range. And
they've only been getting bigger.
Yeah, and I know they had to talk about expanding it, but you have these around the country. And some people can only make it to those and maybe one big one.
Right.
And so I think it was an idea to maybe help them so they might be worth more points. But again, Adepticon's now ITC, which is awesome.
It's a very good change.
Because it was always such a big event, but it always was an outsider. It ran its own thing.
It was always its own weird format with its own weird missions, with its own weird restriction. And it was always just it was an asterisked event for the year, because it was always like, well, we got all these other things I participated in, but Adepticon that I played, that one doesn't count.
Right.
It doesn't count towards anything because the results were always so weird and skewed that it's like I can't trust any of these results. You can't count these because it's just a weird.
But now
format.
it's using the same missions and it's on ITC now. So
I have to imagine it's easier for the tournament organizers too. Like. Less work that you have to do coming up with missions.
Hey, the mission packets is here already.
The mission pack,
and we know what season it is, but that's another. You're talking 300 plus player event,
right?
And so it's almost like no, that's a sports analogy. I was like, if you're familiar with like tennis or golf, they have their events that are like majors.
Which one uses the stick?
Badminton, right?
Yeah. That's a mix. That's the dirty bastard child.
And a catcher's mitt, but it's like each of them has like 4. In tennis they call them grand slams, and then in golf they call them majors. And it was like we kind of get that now, where it's like we have your LVO, Adepticon, Nova, and then you have more because you got 2 U.S. Opens and a World Championship. But those are like your majors.
Right.
You have hundreds of people at that one, or in the case of LVO, no cap, and so you can have 350 Age of Sigmar and 1,000 40k players. And then in Worlds, of course, you got to qualify for. But then these GTs beneath them are big when you compare it to like when the 40k tournament scene really got started in 5th Ed. It was a huge deal when one event had 72 players. I remember it was a massive deal, and 40 of them played Space Wolves. And but it was a huge deal to hit that number. And now the GTs are all of that. Like it's always in that 50 to 80, possibly more players.
Right.
There was a couple that went on the same weekend as LVO, and so a lot of players can maybe make it to those because it's a 2-3 hour drive, not a flight. And so I think giving them more value, more support, that's a really cool idea.
I like that. That's a good idea.
A lot of those tournament organizers do it pretty thanklessly. They just they run them because they like to do it.
A lot of them are because they run a store, and I know ours. The store makes nothing off of it. Like it's basically the entire proceeds from the event, entry and whatever, go towards the prize pool.
Yeah,
like that's. I mean, sure, maybe getting people into the store is the biggest part of being a salesman, but you know what I mean? Like, because people are there and they maybe weren't going to be there before. Maybe they'll buy stuff while they're there.
you get far more extra foot traffic. So we've seen it where after, for example, even the 16-player AoS event we did, or last year's Iowog, all of a sudden the Warhammer shelf gets cleared
Mm-hmm.
because people just buy a bunch of stuff. But some of that was store credit they were granted anyway. And so you're right. The store doesn't make much on a tournament. That's not why you do it. But you get so many people in there, enthused, and sure, they're buying other stuff. But yeah, I think a lot of those mid-level events were just pretty much that. It was like love of the game kind of thing. It's like the roots of the game, you know. The big events are the show. That's, yeah, you want to make it to those and do well. But, like, I don't know. This is like the grind. It's it's that.
This is your Friday Night Magic.
And you know a lot of these people because it's local.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
So even though it's 5 rounds and it means something, well, now it might mean more.
I mean, for us, it's like half local. It's weird because we're located in a place where it's like there's a lot of players here, and so like about half the attendance is local people, but about half of it people drive in from 4 to 6 hours away.
Well, one of them was like Oklahoma. It was like 10 hours.
Wild. It's like, why did you drive here for this? Like for our humble little one dayer.
How many tornadoes you have to go through?
Yeah.
But and it's great to see. And I think this year, because last year it was 64 was the capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were talking about doing 96.
I think so.
And I think because some other smaller event near that time frame canceled.
Right.
And so
they wanted to up it because, there is burnout. They're going to make events too soon. And so the events do cannibalize each other a little bit. And so with this one fizzling out, though, it's like maybe some of the same players would have gone to both, but the players that couldn't go to can only get to choose one now have another option.
Mm-hmm.
And so expanding the event, making it a little bit larger, but that increases the logistics of the event by needing more space and more tables and more terrain.
And I know our local owner about that almost, I think, during last IOWOG, and so he was immediately like, all right, we'll add spots.
Yeah. But getting back to what we were saying is the AoS stuff that we've seen in this first quarter, because it's almost March. Nope, it's March.
It's March.
It is March. It is
Today.
March. It is March.
It is March.
Most of the stuff we've seen, almost all that we've seen has been from last year.
It's not new,
it's
really.
Not new. We haven't seen, like, they're paying off on things we've already seen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It has already been revealed. They're just now coming to fruition. What I think will be interesting is, because there's no new stuff happening, where every other game is getting new, right? And they're showing new things. I mean, for the most part, AoS is not seeing new. I mean, we had heard rumors of store owners even saying, certain products they've been told to not reorder and pull from shelves. Pull from shelves is a very specific kind of coded message to a store. It's pull from shelf is either because a product is defective and you get a refund for it. We're looking at Leviathan cards from launch of 10th.
Sure.
Those were pulled from shelves because they were not allowed to be sold because they were misprinted and there was the wrong cards and it's a defective product. But the other reason you pull from shelf is when new packaging is coming, when something's being rebranded, when something's being updated, and they don't want the old stuff floating out there in circulation. Otherwise, if something was being discontinued, they would say liquidate or let us know if you still have this stuff on the shelf. We'll give you some credit back. Like it's that kind of thing where like you're pretty much certain this product is going, because they can't tell you, hey, we're canceling this game. Don't sell the stuff you have.
Right.
Like they wouldn't say that.
No.
They'd be like, we're selling this game. Good luck with the stuff you bought.
No more support for it. Yada yada.
They wouldn't say pull it from your shelf. They'd say, get rid of it if you can.
Yeah.
And so one of the games that we've been kind of missing, right? That's been missing from the scene for a while. And people are asking about, and there's just no answers for it. Even when they're asked in chats on our streams and stuff, like the questions are just completely ignored.
In fact,
they skip the questions.
Harder to find than Waldo or Carmen Sandiego.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of when Curse City had its kind of botched launch, right? And like people were asking, what about Curse City? Where's the support for this? You said you were going to support it.
Anybody else have any questions?
Anybody else have any questions? You raise your hand like Curse City, and they're like, and nope. All right, end of stream. See ya.
Anybody else? Okay.
And so like it feels a little bit like that. They know the questions are there and they see the questions, but either they're not allowed to talk about it or they don't want to talk about it. Maybe because they have insider information, maybe because they don't have any information. But not talking about it is easier than trying to PR address it when you don't have an answer.
Right.
Well, it may hap that the answer is a new edition, right? Because that's one of the reasons why they say, hey, pull product. It's because it's like we're releasing.
This
new
is
product.
Warcry, is what we're thinking.
This is Warcry is what we're talking about. Maybe a new edition of Warcry is coming out, and they want to clear space for it, and it's going to be a drastic change. Perhaps they'll do something else, right? That is the hope. But just the fact that AoS in general has not been in the spotlight in the last few months, besides the releases of things we've already seen, I'm wondering if we're going to get a pretty big, juicy reveal at Adepticon. Adepticon happens to be the one place that they love showing AoS stuff.
They really do. Yep.
They love showing it off there. It's where we had basically all of the new army releases and reveals.
Yep.
Have been at Adepticon. So I'm hoping the streak continues and we see a massive reveal. I mean, it could be your Chaos Dwarves.
And we
Not
are
your Chaos Dwarves, but
someone's
Chaos
the,
Dwarves.
The people's Chaos Dwarves.
We
are 3.5 weeks.
My only thought about that is that it's not going to be the slave-owning hobgoblin, curly bearded,
Russian hat.
Yeah, it's not going to be those Chaos Dwarves.
They're not going to look like the stop-motion Burgermeister from Santa Claus.
They're not going to be the ones. They're not going to be the Legions of Asgard. Or maybe they'll be Legions of Asgard, but they're not going to be the Chaos Dwarves from the old world.
No.
Period.
No.
It's just not going to be that. And so I wonder if people are going to be disappointed when they actually come out. It's like, well, this isn't what I was expecting.
Right.
Oops, sorry, but this is the vision we have of them in this world.
I could
it's
see
not the same thing.
If the army's coming soon, I could see the infantry looking much more like the Forge World versions, where they were not the goofy aesthetic at all.
Right.
And then only it would be GW updated plastic.
Right.
You know,
similar to how we've seen Horus Heresy stuff treated.
Right.
Right. That type, and be a little more embellished, a little more detail.
Ornate.
Some more interesting things going on there. I think that'd be super cool.
And it might be a whole lot of stuff we don't even see coming. So we're like 3 weeks and some change from that.
Yeah.
And we always like to speculate about Adepticon. It's one of our favorite events. Mm-hmm. And so you think maybe on the AoS side we get a whole new army reveal?
I think it's a possibility. Yeah.
You think it's a possibility?
I think we're gonna get an army reveal.
I don't know why you saying I think it's a possibility. I remember Jim and Dwight sitting in the break room, and Jim just kept adding one day. What about 8 weeks and 3 days? And he's like, I could see that. And Dwight just kept going with it. And Jim's like, okay, but just throwing this out there. And he does another
8 weeks and 4 days.
Yeah.
I think it's a very real possibility.
Yep.
8 weeks and 5 days. Less likely.
Okay, this
However.
is crazy. 8 weeks, 6 days. Yeah. It was like whatever the exact verbiage was. That is why I thought of that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe I was thinking about
Could
it.
be. That's a bold claim.
Yeah. I could see it. See it happening.
It would be big. That'd be a...
It's either that, or like I said, new edition of Warcry, which would be super cool. New release box, some kind.
Why not both?
Hopefully, with Skaven. I would love to see that.
Well, what if
it was a Warcry release?
Now do you think they would double dip here? And what I mean is, wait, but that'd be crossover. What I was going to say is, what if in the new edition of Warcry, the Horns of Hashut are featured, and your Asgore come out, or whatever they're going to call them. They might call them something of Hashut. Mm-hmm. Or do you think that cultist unit would move fully into AoS, like the Rotmire Creed have? They've become fully a part of Magakin.
But they're still playable. They are still 100% playable in Warcry. Maybe they wouldn't be in the
Warcry
future.
that quote exists.
Yeah,
right.
Second edition Warcry.
Okay.
I'm playing a Warcry event at Adepticon.
It's still there.
So yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting if they move that over. It was so weird how it was a brand new kit that they just decided to say discontinued. It was very strange. Yeah. I would not be surprised if it moved over and became sort of a cultist unit of that army as maybe a non-reinforceable staple kind of unit.
It seems too easy not to. I mean, newer kit, you've called them out by name. One of the preview snippets that they teased felt very Hashut-y.
Yeah. We had like the face, which is hotly contested of what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was a dragon face. People say, I see bull eyes. I see a Hashut symbol. And I'm like, I don't. But you see what you want to see in a lot of these things.
That's true.
So there's something big coming. We don't know what it is yet. There's something big. Hashut being another Chaos faction would be really weird, considering that Skaven got such a big treatment of
They did.
their god joining the pantheon of chaos gods. I think it'd be really really weird to do a sixth one.
Add a sixth one
right away.
Right.
I think it would be a disservice to them, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, if they did something more like Shadow Elves, because that's another one that's been cooking since minute 1 of first edition.
Yeah.
That was in the lore.
So you're withdrawing your Haship prediction.
I don't know,
your Chaos Dwarves
man.
prediction.
No, I think they're going to be. I think it's still going to be Chaos Dwarves. I'm not going to withdraw it. I still think that's what we're going to see. I would love to see other things, but that's because those are things that I'm interested in.
I think both are on the way in some capacity.
Yep.
But we don't know how much they have done. We know we've heard individuals who used to work there talk about what the process is like, from conception to design to painting to photography to writing the books to printing. It can take 2 years,
right,
or more, and then sometimes they have to sit on it and find a release window, and then all the packaging's got to be made. So
I'm also, related to dwarves in general, I'm really interested to know what their plans are for dwarves and AoS, because with a new dwarf faction coming, if and when, it feels like it's like you're having a new baby, and your 2 older kids are being forgotten and just being pushed aside in favor of the new baby. Everyone look at the new baby. Everyone come look at the baby.
When are you going to see the baby?
Yeah, Seinfeld. And that's what I think this kind of a faction would feel like to me, though. Because there are other dwarf factions in the game that were made for AoS that need attention, they need help, they need model releases, they need rule changes.
They need to be expanded.
They need to be updated. They need stuff that it would feel like a real slap in the face to those armies if a new dwarf one comes out and it's way more fleshed out than those two are.
Right off the beginning.
Fleshed out. I'm talking about Fire Slayers.
I'm
talking about Caradron Overlords. I'm talking about the dwarf holds of traditional dwarves who still exist in the cities and still exist in these mortal realms.
For now, they still do.
I'm like, those are the armies I'm kind of talking. It's like there are other dwarves that just really are not being paid attention to. I mean, do something. Make it something drastic. Make it say, here's a book that is all dwarves.
Just like your Orc clans.
Combine them all. Right? Give me a combined dwarf army. Give me separate smaller armies that can play just these individual ones. Something. Let there be some kind of an update that makes them new, that makes them fresh, that makes them more interesting, makes it feel like you're thinking about them and actually working on them.
Yeah, because the two Caradron Overlords and Fire Slayers didn't exist until Age of Sigmar.
I mean, we had Slayers from Old World. But and the Fire Slayers really expanded on that because they were followers of, which one was it?
I don't know.
There's the Smith and there's the Slayer.
One's Grungni and one's
and
I don't know the other one.
Grimnir.
Okay.
That's him. Grimnir is the Slayer god.
But they did this and then just they have only done characters.
Yeah.
And a Warcry
They're like, we're done. And the Warcry warband was very recent.
Yep.
They did an early Underworlds warband, the Chosen Axes. I remember that because Chosen Axes were dominant in Season 1 because everyone had to buy that warband in order to get like 3 or 4 of the cards out of their deck.
When it was that system, yeah.
They were staples. And so like people loved the Chosen Axes for that reason. But that was like pretty much the first and last time they got a model release besides character, individual character. And then all of a sudden it's like, and here's a dwarf that could have been part of your faction, but it's a Cities of Sigmar / Undivided Order model in, what's his name? The original Slayer.
Yep.
Who could have been Fire Slayer, by the way,
right.
and they chose not to. And then it was like, here's a Warcry warband where these guys, they hunt down monsters, but you don't have any monsters in your army, really. But here's a baby version of a Magmadroth that could have been expanded into being units of adolescent Magmadroths and it was almost like irritating.
Have we talked about this before?
It was irritating to me that it's like, here's a little joke, a baby Magmadroth, and it's too small to actually be useful because it's like the size of a dog.
Right.
Drives me nuts. Fix your shit.
Well, in Caradron's really original design, neat army, but then
also I've gotten nothing.
No, they went through 3rd edition and got the guy with the vacuum or something, right? They got one character.
So they got one character. No, he was already out. They got a They got the code right, which is the guy that has the book.
Oh,
Who's like quoting the rule book to the,
Right.
that's like the only update they got. I guess they got the
he says actually.
Exactly.
Mhm.
No, they got a guy, an engine rigger in dirigible suit. It's like a support smith character riding on with like a balloon harness, and then they got the code right. I think that's about it.
Character.
2 characters. They got the Profiteers, which was an Underworld warband, and they got a Black Library named character, Captain Admiral
With the triple pistol.
There's a triple rifle kind of thing.
Okay.
Or is it a pistol? It was a triple
short,
barrel
whatever.
gun. It was something
Blunderbuss.
Blunderbuss. Yeah. They got him, who's got an axe, spear, pick. I don't know. It's a weird weapon.
Yep.
But they got that guy, and it's like, okay,
Characters.
what else you got for me? New ships, new dedicated melee unit? No. All right.
Nope.
So again, those 2 armies, since their conception and their initial releases, have really not been touched,
No,
which is really unfortunate.
And it is unfortunate because they launched with popularity. A lot of people bought them, and they just haven't gotten touched. So I can see the idea that they need to be touched before ... But I also, design studio probably works on so much at a time, and it's a shame because maybe that's something they could work on. I don't know if they just go by motivation, inspiration, whatever. But they've got to have release schedules of some kind. You got to figure, well, we're going to come around to Caradrons and Fireslayers again.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to give these people yet another hero and just release the book and tell them to wait till next time?
A book with the same artwork as last time? Sounds great.
Right. Port the rules from
Make
the
it
index,
happen.
and here you go.
Yeah.
And now, did we see either of them on the roadmap?
Not that I can recall. I don't even think I've seen rumor engines about them. Yeah, no.
So maybe they are getting some updates. Maybe
Or
they're not sure.
Or maybe they're like, well, we're done. No more dwarves. They just get rid of them. I don't know. There was a rumor that Fire Slayers were not getting a battle tome this edition. Which
is bizarre to me.
To me does not necessarily mean, oh, no battle tome means you're being cut from the game.
No, because they were created specifically for this game.
Look at Orc War Clans.
Right.
Did Ironjawz get a battle tome this edition? No, and they won't because they're part of Orc War Clans. I could see something very similar happening where they combine Caradrons and Fire Slayers into one dwarf army, and they let them run it as that. I mean, that kind of would fix some of the issues with both armies.
Because they could play independently or they could play together.
If you played together, you'd now have dedicated melee units. You'd now have dedicated shooting units. You'd have mobility. Like, you'd have a lot more tools.
What if they let the transports carry Fire Slayers?
That would be really funny. What if they also then, in addition to that, let you play traditional dwarves as well? I don't know. Could be a good army if you can play them all together.
Put Gotrek in the book.
And then led by the White Dwarf and Gotrek. Those are 2
Put
factions.
Grommadil and Gotrek in there.
Well, because there were teasers in White Dwarfs and things like that about Grombrindal wanting to create like a unified dwarf empire. Like, not empire, but like unifying the dwarfs as one people together again. And like him being the single kind of linchpin that holds them all together, because he's kind of one of those legendary characters.
He is.
That has been everything. He's been everywhere.
Yep.
And he's done everything. Every dwarf has memories and legends of Grombrindal. So it's like you could do something like that. That would be kind of neat. I think that'd be a
maybe that's why they're not. Maybe that's why they're not on the map yet.
Right.
They're working on this and it's big.
Maybe.
In the meantime, we may get the evil dwarves first.
Yeah. But that means, if you're doing that, dwarf holds, you're gonna need heavy armor back. You're gonna need dwarf cannons back, because they've cut all the dwarf crewed cannons. Actually, pretty much everything has been cut from the Ironweld now. All you have is gyrocopters that are dwarf.
But
piloted.
Those showed up in the
they're an old world.
Arcane Journal.
I don't know, man. It's weird. Like I said, it's weird.
So why they don't have it?
Maybe they're gonna cut the Cities of Sigmar stuff because Caradrons are so similar to the Sky Dwarfs of gyrocopter days.
Right.
I don't know.
See, I know yourself and others have hope for the old-fashioned style dwarves. I have a feeling they're getting AoS cut.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to stay.
But that said, if they do unify them and release some new kits of any kind, could be new unified ones that belong to the army, or it could be new kits for that would be good for them. But then I could see why they're pushed down the road a bit. But this Asgore or Hashut or whatever, maybe they may have had this ready to go for a long time. And to your earlier comment about, well, now they're going to just give us a sixth god in the faction. Hashit could end up one like the Crone Ladies thing,
right?
Where it's a dead one, and there's just
you mean Cain?
Yeah, it's a dead one. It's a dead one, and it's just some people still.
I know, but that is funny though, because like the elven god Cain is dead. Mm-hmm. The name of Cain is invoked to gain popularity and gain worship, so that that power can be stolen.
Yeah,
which I think is hilarious to me. That's like Marathi's whole shtick, because she channels that into herself. But the Crone Seer evokes a different god from the Elven pantheon, which was Morag-Hay,
right? Who
was the witch crone, magic, kind of seer god who. I don't know how magic works in the realms. If you believe in an actual god long enough, do they
manifest?
Do they manifest? They come back? Are they reborn? Are they created? I mean, like there's that kind of thing in a lot of fantasy,
right.
in settings where like if there's enough belief, they birth it. I mean, that was kind of how Slaanesh.
Yeah, Eldar
right?
jerked off for 60 million years, and Slaanesh was born.
Right, Slaanesh coalesced from all of that.
Yep.
Material.
Elven gravy. Yep.
It's a gravy monster.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, who knows where that kind of stuff is going? I think it's super cool.
Yeah.
I'd love expansions, and I'd love to see like factions break off from one another. A living storyline makes some of that possible. Indeed.
It does.
I kind of like thinking about it like, how those roving armies work in Total War, where like they have a theme. You run across an army, it's like, what are a bunch of plague monks and flagellants, and like, what are these guys all doing together in an army? Well, they have a theme, and they're all religious fanatics in the same army,
or they're all like Pigpen, or
right. Well, whatever the thing is, like, there's these weird like mixed armies that like unify for a purpose. I mean, while the Crone and Marathi might not be in the same allegiance to one another because they have different beliefs, maybe they do draw from the same group of people, which are all these Darzukane models. But it's technically a different army. It's an army. You call it an army of renown, and you play it differently, right? That kind of thing. I like the idea of doing those kind of things. So, and then eventually, you release models specifically for that army of renown or that sub faction, and then all of a sudden they become their own thing.
Yeah, you can keep them all. You can keep them all in their own in one book, and then. You give them all these different ways to play.
I mean, think about how the synergies work just in the rules for, like Be'lakor, right? His little homies, his legionnaires, and his fiends. No, what are they called? Not fiends. Are they fiends? The wing guys?
Oh,
Harpies.
Harpies.
Is that what they're called?
Furies.
We
got.
So like, there's the Furies. There's them. There's the Centurion Marshal. And there's like those kind of beasties that all kind of are in. Be'lakor's retinue, they only really synergize with Be'lakor and themselves and each other. There's kind of no reason to bring legionnaires in an army that contains Chaos Warriors and Marauders, right? Like you play that with Be'lakor.
Yep.
That's the only reason. And it's not saying you can't, but you shouldn't because it's not efficient. Right? Those models, in my mind, are for the Be'lakor faction. They are Legion of the First Prince models without actually being required to be in that army.
Yep.
In the same way you can play Be'lakor and Orcan in the same army if you want to. It's not the best thing to do. So I don't know. I think it's very interesting being presented with these multi ways to play, and even having them be efficient and effective. I love that style.
Well, the Auric War Clans sticking together might be exactly what they do with the Order Dwarves. And that could be just something they've been stuck on for a while. It might have even been they thought about it in third, and that's why each army got so little. Is that this was something that was in the works, but was going to take time.
Yeah.
And it's crummy when they have to go through an edition to do that, where an army basically gets nothing. But I don't know. They sort of dug their own trench in this situation where the release schedule is now so rapid,
right?
And each edition happens so quickly.
Well, there's also been so much attention needing to go towards these other endeavors, right? Like the plastification of Horus Heresy.
Oh my goodness, so many kits.
Right. Like that's a lot of production time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of new armies coming out for 40K. Wow, at least one. But there's new stuff coming out for 40K that it takes up production time, and like this kind of stuff eats up production. And so it's like the new factory, new warehouse can't come soon enough.
No.
So they can ramp up some, because I think that is hamstringing themselves with trying to get a lot of this stuff out. It's just, how do we get it out quickly enough? We can't. All right, we'll bump it, push it back. This other thing's more important. We need to get this done
we've still got
first.
stuff to release every month. It's just bigger projects now have to wait longer.
Right. And that could have been the case, like we said, with Emperor's Children, when they made the books and the models were on their way, but then they got bumped for production time, and the models got made way later, but the books were done already. And so then when they came together and these new models came out, models might be brand new, but they're like, well, this book is clearly old. This is an old design. There's points in it that don't make sense having points in the book anymore. Yeah. That kind of thing. Who knows? I mean, you think that the sort of old aesthetic of actual, tombs and mausoleums and stuff of the Barrow Knights, like that design hasn't been around forever waiting to be made.
Right.
Like that was one of the complaints that I had seen about those Barrow units. The Barrow units I think look great. I can't complain about the aesthetic of the models themselves, but the faction terrain that's coming along with it is just, it's basically an updated version of like the Garden of Moor building. Remember that old terrain kit where it was like some fences and some little grave tombs, and there was one little mausoleum building.
Wasn't it one of the dungeons in OG Diablo?
Basically, yeah.
Or the expansion or whatever.
Well, if you went to Bloodraven's area and killed her, and there were like 4 different little things to go down and explore, that was what one of those buildings was. Yeah. Or Diablo 4 where you go or Diablo 3 when you go to the thing and you're looking for... Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's very much just that little building. Well, this new piece of terrain is that building, but by itself. And there's not that much different. I mean, like, it looks a lot better. And they're not, I don't think, planning on making that old terrain anymore. So this is the only way you can kind of get that old terrain. It evokes the idea of that old terrain, which is fine. But like you had pointed out with the classical style of dwarfs, it doesn't fit AoS.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit like that with these Barrow Legions, with this just, gothic art style on vampires in AoS. It's like, well, this made sense when it was in Sylvania, right? Because you had these old, 100,000-year-old castles that they were built in these really gothic styles, and they've been there forever. It made sense they looked old.
Yep.
Whereas it's like, well, AoS, they had the opportunity to reinvent the aesthetic.
Yep.
And while they did for some things, like they had the Ulfenkarn, which was the cursed city, had all new aesthetic. It was kind of Persian mixed with Nordic, I don't know, sort of style. Because they had like ring mail almost, but then they also had like breastplates and round shields. I mean, it was weird. It was really weird aesthetic mix for the new like skeletons and stuff. But these Barrow Knights and the Barrow Guard and the Barrow Lords and stuff, they look very old world. They look like the old fashioned skeletons that we had. I mean, minus maybe the Batwing helmets, But what comes with them is this gothic style art that fits the old world, but I don't know if it fits AoS. It's like, I don't know. They haven't talked enough about the Realm of Death to really know what's going on there, if this makes sense.
It's only been like whatever Nagash is up to is all we really hear about.
Right.
So this stuff feels almost like a new army. But looks like an old one.
Right. It's weird. It's kind of weird. But I think that feeds into the whole thing of like, well, they've had these designs forever.
It could be.
And they're just now making them. They're just now getting the time to actually make them.
And I had heard rumors about like just how few people work in that OG factory, and I don't know if that's true, and maybe that's a part of it.
Well, like the machines do all the work, not the people.
Correct.
So,
but their machine capacity was not
correct
expanded to
right.
and as much as GW has grown and succeeded in the last few years, it still feels like they were the rumor. Don't know if it's true. Would still love to be a part of their program, but like is. That they were still kind of running ship like they were a small niche company, and so just keeping up with the production demands, design demands, and everything is just maybe one of the areas where they're slow at the moment.
Where it's like, okay, you've expanded. Clearly, you've got a bigger operation. Now you need the capacity to maintain that bigger operation, even if you call it like set up your operation. Right, even if you buy too much equipment and too much warehouse space, don't say, well, we don't need to do this much because we're not producing this much. Like, clearly you will at some point.
Yeah.
Like, prepare for the future. like easily meet the demands now by over purchasing equipment. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Like I don't see them like overextending and flopping. You know, like they're too big to really do that. I think at this point.
Yeah. Well, now now that they support so many games, I mean, I know. So the Horus Heresy thing could end up a bubble effect where they're producing so much plastic right now to get the game updated, but they're going to hit a point where, okay, all the stuff's plastic. Now what do you do?
Right.
You're not releasing new units for this old world.
Oh no, the sales are dipping because everyone who plays it has bought the things.
It's the Lord of the Rings bubble that they encountered in 2004.
Right. Now what do? Well, you go back in time.
Yep.
Now let's do it during a different.
Let's do the Age of
War.
Darkness or whatever it was, or the
now that
or no, the Age of
that could be cool. Whatever.
the Old Knight or
If they went back even further,
Age of Strife. Is that what it was called?
No, that was AoS.
Might also have been
Right, okay,
40K.
okay. But if they went back even further than that, right, to like the days of Melkor, and they did like the old, the Black Numenorians and like the old Lord of the Rings.
Oh, and AoS. Oh,
yeah, Lord of the Rings, like that.
Oh, First Age stuff.
That would be an interesting thing to do.
Well, that gives,
right?
and that would give them a massive amount of content. I mean, that
would also give them like free reign to like design monsters again.
Yeah,
because there were so many monsters that kind of don't show up in Lord of the Rings proper.
Correct.
Because they've died off or been killed or killed each other even.
They've gone extinct, really.
Right,
Yeah.
and so it's like there's tons of that they could do in the First Age.
Yep,
that could be cool.
Yeah, because they could do everything like Glaurung, the wingless one, and like I don't know if they'd ever do Caligon the Black or whatever, the one that was the size of a mountain. But like, but yeah, you'd have monsters. You'd have weird spirit creatures. You'd have werewolves were a thing back then. And you would have a lot of names, big names that took place in the First Age. Elves, men, and evil. And you'd be covering 10,000 years plus of stuff. Yes. With Tolkien, they really have a lot they can reach back into. I was thinking...
But instead, they went back like, I don't know, 25 years.
Yeah.
It's like, go further.
Well, and they are also plasticking up that game. They're bringing a lot of old stuff up. But I was also thinking of... I thought you were talking about go back farther in 40K, like go back before Horus Heresy.
No. That would
to like the Age of Old Night or the Age of Strife.
So you go back to the time when they're like humans ran around with like M16s.
The Emperor threw the Void Dragon to Mars or whatever that was.
I was talking about like the 1900s.
Yeah. He did that allegedly during like the Roman Empire, I thought, in the story. I know there was one story where he was Alexander. And then it was like, and the other perpetuals had to stop him. That's how Alexander died.
Alexander, be reasonable.
Be reasonable. John Rhys Meyers screaming that awkwardly.
But yeah, it's funny. Alexander. But yeah, no, not 40K. Go back further. I mean, you're in the eras of 40K and in that universe that matter.
Yep.
You know, like I don't know what else. But
I mean,
you'd really be interested in.
They've got to be. And every time I say that, like all of a sudden 7 more kits come out. But they've got to be reaching a point where most of 30K stuff that was Forge World is going to be plastic soon. And then...
Well, maybe they're going to start doing things like specialist units for each individual Legion. Because I know I bought some kits back in the day that were Legion-specific ones.
Like
that,
the Gorgon
that they
Terminators,
definitely
that's what
haven't,
I had.
They haven't made them plastic yet.
No.
I had the more Death and squads, the snipers. And then there was these like, because I'm Raven Guard, and they had these double like lightning claw jump pack guys. Yeah, so those are my 2 unique units. And then again, there was the Gorgon Terminators, and you had
for Iron Hands,
something else. What was it? Was it a breacher unit?
No, they so it just looked like 5 TAC Marines with pipes coming, like wires and cables coming out of them. I don't even know what they were supposed to be. But they looked derpy.
It was iron. No. Imperial Fists had the breachers.
Yeah.
With the shields and the shotguns. Yep. Yeah, that's what it was.
Every Legion had something, and they're all old, so they could certainly go back and start plasticking those. They do have time. You're right. You're right.
There's lots. But so at least 2 kits per Legion, 18 Legions.
Well, in this,
But
that amount of production, plus they're still trying to keep AoS and 40K up to date. Like they need this extra production.
Plus whatever like new Praetors and new banner bearers and new named characters they want to do.
You're looking at that. You're talking 8 to 10 years of like stuff if they go at this pace, and that's how long can we wait?
Because like all the vehicles are done. Like that was the biggest thing. Maybe they'll get into planes and start doing plastic planes. Yeah, whatever.
Never ends.
I know. Well, we'll see. But like we said, hopefully with the new production requirements, new facilities are going to be set up, and they've been approved, and they'll be built, and they'll be able to meet demands better and actually keep up with their own schedule. Not like the players' expectations, the players' schedules, but like they've set their own like clear goals that they want to hit. And it, like you said, it feels like they're not hitting those goals because of how delayed some things seem. So.
And it is just speculation, but it's just we get some products that come out where either the rules that are with it, some cases the model design, I mean, it's still a modern aesthetic, but you'll get them and it'll be like, feels like they sat on this maybe for a minute. Yeah. So I don't know.
And sometimes I think they recoup of them and they make them into like event models and stuff because they just didn't have a time to release it. So they're like, well, let's just do it like this. Or like when we got 4 Chaos Sorcerers in a row that all didn't have special rules and none of them really were better than the others. Or inspired rule changes for the unit in general.
Nothing.
Because when that derpy like pincer head Chaos Sorcerer got retired and the other 4 came out, the rules stayed exactly the same in the book. And it was like, man, this is such an uninspired way to like herald in a new, really cool character model.
And maybe this is just me, but I'm not a fan of when they name a character model that comes out and it doesn't come with rules for that name. Right. So they'll do a Black Library one or the special Chaos Sorcerer who had a name.
So when they do commemorative series, they usually don't have rules. But when they do a Black Library model, it usually does. There's different categories of characters. Okay. So like Sarkin, the whatever Chaos Sorcerer was a commemorative model that wasn't supposed to be a unique one. He was just a unique model.
Which is dumb.
It is. I completely agree.
Like,
I agree.
If you give him a name, give him a war scroll.
I agree.
Give him a data sheet, whatever.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be much. Like maybe he's less fighty, more magic-y. Maybe he's more magic-y, less fighty. Make his one special ability or his command ability just slightly different.
Right.
Give me a reason to make him a little different.
And then don't even make him match play legal. Give him a Legends rules, maybe.
Yeah, if you're worried about it.
If you're worried about it. Breaking things because he's 10 points more, but then he's 20% or 20% better. Right. So he doesn't work, so he breaks the game because the original one isn't good enough now for the players. Like whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever. But yeah, I agree. Put a little effort in. Put some unique rules in. You
came up with a name and a story for him.
Yeah. Just build something for him out of your own path to glory. Whatever. Do something like that.
I think in Age of Sigmar, we need more named characters that are not holdovers from Old World.
There are some armies that have 0 that really need some of that.
Yep.
Because that's what lets you connect with the army itself. Is like, here's a story about a character in this lore that I know they're not going away. I can follow them. There'll be books about them. There'll be stories in the book that tell their accolades, like that kind of thing.
There'll be name drops in other army books.
That's how you connect. That's how you keep people going. Ogres. Just saying. Need a named character, at least one.
Need a named character.
Come on now.
Not a commemorative one.
But speaking of ogres, I could gorge myself right now.
I could eat some ripe meat off the bone.
Yeah. Let's eat.
Let's do that.
Thanks for joining. We hope you enjoyed. Follow us for more of our weekly episodes on YouTube Podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. You can follow myself and Llama on Instagram. We are at Llama Paints Minis and Hyena Paints Minis. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. And as always, we'll catch you next time.